Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Fumi, and I'm an analytics specialist here at CRO Digital. Today, we're going to be looking at the data-driven way to improve your website conversion rate and performance. There will be time for questions at the end, so ask questions as I run through, and I'll try and get them answered at the end. This webinar is in support of our Conversion Rate Optimisation Guide and Incremental Path to Success. If this is something of interest to you, feel free to jot down the URL, coos.co.uk/CRO guide. And in this session, we're going to cover a systematic approach that you can use on any website to continue to improve your marketing performance. We're going to cover 3 main points. So by the end of this webinar, you should know all about the tools that you need to have in order to excel at CRO, how to derive insights from your data and how to turn your insights into improved website performance, and a testing methodology that you can use across any website. So by the end of this webinar, you should be very comfortable at delivering a comprehensive CRO program. So I think a good place to start is to define what conversion rate optimization is. And this can be described as the method of using analytics and user feedback to improve the performance of your website. CRO can be used to improve any metric in your website that's important to your business, often called KPIs that you're trying to improve, but it's often associated with acquiring new customers, registration, downloads, etc. So when done well, the performance of your website should improve, and so should the campaigns that you're running. It should also help negate the need for a new website as you are continually improving the website as it lives. The more improvements that you make on your site, the more likely people are going to complete the desired actions. Therefore, you'll see a better return on investment on your marketing. And in turn, this should help your business grow. So I'll kind of want to start by looking at a few examples of CRO in practice. So here we have one example from Expedia, and they claim by removing one form field, they increase revenue by £12 million a year. So how do they do this? So I think everyone knows Expedia by now. You can go on there, book holidays and compare flights. And through research, they noticed a discrepancy between the number of people that were filling out the form and the revenue that came through. And what they saw was there was a huge number of failed transactions. And when they investigated this, they could see that the additional field by the name of company name was confusing users. So what they saw was users entering their bank name for whatever reason. After this, they started inputting the address of their bank rather than the address of where they live. So as a result, when you went to the payment verification, this failed, causing a huge amount of friction and a number of failed transactions. So they spotted this issue, they fixed it, and this resulted in an extra £12 million worth of revenue a year. But let's be clear, I'm not saying removing one field from your form and you're saying the same revenue, improve performance. But I think this example touches on a few techniques that we'll be going through this webinar today. Another great example is a sports brand by the name of SportsCheck. They're a Canadian-based sports brand, and see if you can spot the difference between these 2 pages. When you look at the pages, they look pretty much identical, but the one on the right is 7.3% more effective. And what they've done here is they tested a small box under the order summary section. And what they've done here is they've tested something known as a value proposition. And in essence, this is an equation where you look at cost versus benefit, and that equals motivation. And with all websites, the goal is that your perceived benefits outweigh the perceived cost. And when this happens, users will be motivated to act. So they created their hypothesis, and that's the statement where you go, by changing X to Y, it will cause an effect of Z. And they increased the prominence of free shipping, emphasizing the fact that most users have actually already qualified for free shipping, and this will result in more motivation and more conversions. With an average order value of over $100, it's safe to assume that most users would qualify for free shipping. In addition to that, shipping is a huge factor when it comes to converting on e-commerce sites. So rather than following best practice, they changed the wording free shipping with orders over 25 by actually showing users, congratulations, your order qualifies for free shipping. They also took this further and show different messages for users that haven't qualified for free shipping. For example, they'll show the messages such as, just for $15 more, you can qualify for free shipping. And I think this test is great because the user doesn't have to think, and it shifts their perspective. They turn a statement that required the user to self-calculate into a reason to celebrate for those who qualified. As a result, more users are more motivated to complete their transactions. So there we had 2 great case studies, but I wanted to tackle some misconceptions around CRO. You know, based on that, we could assume that CRO is easy. We can just copy what other people are doing, right? But let's create a scenario here. You are a sports brand and you're selling clothing. Your boss has set you the task of improving your website to get a conversion rate of 30%, and it currently converts at 15%. Through research, you know that your competitor's website converts at 40%. So in order to get my website to 40%, can I copy my competitor? In this example, Nike. Can I just look at what they're doing, copy the layout, and so on? And the simple answer is no. Looking at your competitors and seeing what they're doing from a best practice viewpoint can be helpful, but it does not guarantee them the same practices will work for you. So I kind of want to tackle why this may be. And that's because there are a huge number of factors that actually affect conversion rate. And I think it's something people often forget. People tend to get obsessed with the small things, such as changing the CTA color or changing the CTA text. But these are just elements of CRO and not CRO. And all these factors why why copying your competitors simply will not work. So just have a look at a few of these factors on this slide. We have things such as trust, you know, the branding, the past experience of that brand, price, and this can go on and on and on. And this is the same for everyday purchases. Just think, you know, why do you buy the toothpaste you buy? Or, you know, maybe let's have a look at something a bit more exciting. Why do you buy the phone you buy or even the car you own? There were a huge array of factors, things such as past experience, word of mouth, branding, trust, and so on, that made you come to that decision to purchase with that brand. So sure, you can copy what other people are doing, but if all the factors are not aligned, the likelihood is the performance will not be the same. And this is the same principle with a website. Yes, your web page could look the same, but let's take in this example, use your past experience, that might be different. And that could be the deciding factor in the process. And the answer to CRO is getting to the bottom of these factors through research and analysis. And you need to understand your audience and your website's barriers, and create great fixes for those barriers, and performance should increase. Some other misconceptions is CRO is just a list of tactics. You know, we have seen the rise of loads of blog posts, and we're probably guilty of publishing some ourselves. Things such as 100 crazy hacks to boost conversion rate, or the holy grail of e-commerce conversion rate optimization, the 91-point checklist. But we've really seen that CRO is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Your goal is to figure out what your specific customers do and what will work on your specific site. But let's just entertain the fact that CRO was a list of tactics. Bearing in mind that the average test takes 4 weeks to complete, it would take you 7 years to complete that first checklist that we spoke about. So the key is really to focus on the things that matter to your users the most. Another misconception is that a failed test is a waste of time. This is not true. The key is to learn from losing tests, and each test should educate you more and more about your visitors' behavior, what motivates them, what are their likes, or what are their dislikes. And having this information empowers you to make intelligent decisions and create strategic plans, therefore giving you a greater chance of succeeding because you're using data to back up your hypothesis. Another misconception is, we don't need CRO. We have a new website coming up. We'd rather wait till it's launched before doing CRO. Our new site will fix all our issues. That is great, but how are you going to take the decisions on your new site? Are you going to take the decisions from data or from a HIPPO? And for those who don't know what HIPPO is, a HIPPO is an acronym for highest paid person's opinion. And CRO is great at giving you that data that allows you to make those decisions when undertaking a new website build. As well as that, CRO means that you're constantly improving your website, addressing issues before you need a new website. And lastly, some websites take, as long as a year to build. And during that time, you can make a number of savings through improved efficiencies through CRO. And in some instances, these savings could have paid for a whole new website. So what's the secret behind conversion rate optimization? What have I told you that you only had to solve 3 questions? And these questions are, what are the factors that make users convert? What are the factors that don't make them convert? And what issues are users faced with, and how can we fix these? Because in all honesty, that's all that matters. If you get this right, then you will have a high converting website. Another key aim of CRO is the ability to match the user's intent with the purpose of your website or page. Typically, there's 3 types of websites we see, and I've got a diagram here. So the first diagram on the left, we can see the customer's intent, and we've got the website purpose on the right. And we can see there's no overlap here. So what this looks like in practice is, imagine if I was running a PPC campaign or Nike running a PPC campaign. I entered the search term running shorts, but when I landed on their website, I was shown pages of tennis balls. It's clear that it's not what I was looking for, and therefore I leave and do not convert. As a result, we'd have a website or page with a high bounce rate and a low conversion rate. And by simply fixing those issues and showing me a page with running shorts, I'm more likely to convert. This might sound crazy and a bit basic, but these sort of things do happen. The second example is a lot more common. There is some overlap between what your customer wants and what your website does or what your page does, but usually it's a pain or it's hard to complete. One example of this is you could have received an email from Debenhams for Father's Day campaign, and when you land on the landing page and you finally figured out what you want to buy your dad for Father's Day, you go to complete the process, but it's hard. The checkout doesn't work. And this is kind of what, typically the websites that we see more often than not. But we should be aspiring to this diagram on the right where we have our big overlap between customer intent and website purpose. When this happens, we have a high converting website. So from personal experience, there's one website that does this well, and this is ASOS. So there's a number of things. There's a number of reasons why I think ASOS are great, and I'm just going to run through a few. So you get next day delivery of your order before 12 a.m. at a cost of just £10 a year, because they know that I'm impulsive and I buy things last minute and I buy clothes on a whim and I can't wait. The site is extremely easy to use on my phone or on computer or on my tablet, so I can buy clothes when I'm on the move or when I'm just relaxing in the evening. Images of the highest quality. They use models and use videos, allowing me to see how the clothes, could look like on me. I think that's important because they're an online store and they don't actually have any physical shops. The return process is great. Simply just slot the clothes back in the bag they sent and drop it off to my local off license most times. And they understand that, buying clothes online, you're not always going to get, the clothes aren't always going to be perfect when they arrive. Even going to the point where they use data to work out, the size I'm likely to wear. Often I'll see a message reading along the lines of size M was bought and not returned by 80% of shoppers with similar purchase history and body information to you. I mean, how amazing is that? But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that they've looked at every element of the user journey They've identified all the pain points and they produce really great fixes. That's what I love about that brand. So how do I get to a similar stage where we see the same overlap? It's just data, right? Well, yes and no. There is some perception that Google Analytics or other tools out there will truly revolutionize the way business is done, and just by opening up Google Analytics, you'll be presented with a list of things to fix. But that's not the truth. And most often what we see is this really big blue bubble, which is data. We've got lots of data and very little insight. And that's because Google Analytics and other click data tools are great at telling us the what, but not the why. We know what users are clicking, what pages they're visiting, what they're purchasing, but we don't know the why. And the why is really important. And with the rise of big data, we can move away from this kind of Web Analytics 1.0 way of working and move into Web Analytics 2.0 way of working. So what is Web Analytics 2.0? This can be described as the analysis of qualitative and quantitative data from your website and the competition to drive continual improvement of the online experience that your customers and potential customers have, which translate into your desired outcomes, both offline and offline. But I think the main point to pick up from this quote is the addition of qualitative data and the fact that you're continually improving. But in order to kind of move into this way of working, I think it requires certain traits. So I've got a few traits written down here. And the first one may seem a bit of a no-brainer, but you need to be analytical. You need to know how to use the tools. You need to know what to look for. And you need to be able to understand the importance of small things such as sample size and statistics. But hopefully this webinar should help. Secondly, you need to be data-driven. You've got to remember that the user's at the heart, and you've got to remember that we're optimizing the website for the user. And data does matter. It allows us to really understand the user, and it is this data that must fuel your CRO efforts, not your own bias. There must be a desire to never stop improving, always wanting to test, to keep learning, keep trying new things, and keep changing, as well as being adaptable to changes in marketing channels, in technologies, and also changes of your audience. As your audience changes, we've got to make sure that we adapt. And it's all these incremental changes and improvements that add up to success. We need to be curious. I think this is a very important trait. We need to always be asking why. So we want to be asking things like, why does the process cycle look like this? What are people doing on this page and why are they doing it? What do they want to do? And what matters to them the most? Is it price? Is it features? Is it build quality? And so on. You need to be able to learn from tests. And lastly, which I think is really important, and we're going to go into this in more depth, is you need to be process orientated. So we've seen the rise of blog posts, but we've seen that CRO is much deeper than a list of tactics. And we must move away from this. Pair-Pack Conversion Excel puts this best. Amateurs focus on tactics, where pros focus on process. So how do I focus on the process and not the tactics? So we're going to run through a very clear process that you can use time and time again on any website. And this looks a little like this. So before we can get started with this process, I think it's important that you sit down with your boss or your client, and we need to address what is the KPI that we're trying to improve. Are we looking to drive more leads? Is it to increase order average value? Is it to increase overall conversion rate on a specific device? Do we want more people downloading our brochures? Are we looking for repeat business? And so on and so on. Every business is different, and it's important to make sure this is clearly set out. On top of that, we need to ensure that we can track everything that we need to track, because we need to make sure that our analytics tools can answer the questions that we want to ask. So that means setting up things such as goals, or making sure that buttons are being tracked, or if we've got a video on the website, we need to measure engagement with that video. And once that is done, we've we go through this six-stage process. And the first one is the analysis and research. And I think this is where the hard work takes place and almost the foundation of your program. And we're going to go through this in more detail in a minute. The next phase is planning. So planning, once you've done your research, you should have a list of things that you need to fix and address. You plan it, you put it in, and you prioritize the order of which you're going to test. Next is actually designing. So if you're working with a client or even in-house and you need to show it to stakeholders, we create visuals. So most of the time these are wireframes, and these show us how the change that we're going to make to the website will look. After that goes into building. So you build the page. So if you're running a A/B test or a redirection test, we have variation A and variation B, which would be built. And then we go into testing. So the pages are now built. Now we actually run page A versus page B. And then once the test is concluded, we want to make sure that we learn from each test and that we're always improving. And then this process repeats and repeats. And I think it's important to remember that the test plan that you create needs to be flexible. If there's something that you learned from your last split test, make sure that can kind of feed into your split test moving forwards. And in order to complete this process, we need to have a clear research plan, and we need to have the tool to be able to give us the insights. So we're going to look at a few tools that can help you with this. And tools give us the ability to answer, ask great questions and, hopefully get great answers back. And it kind of moves us away from just collecting that click data and tell us more about the why. So before I do so, I just want to run through a few questions. So earlier in the webinar, I spoke about there are 3 questions that are key to a high converting website. What makes the user convert? What doesn't make them convert? And are there any issues? And if so, what is wrong and how can it be fixed? Your tools need to be able to give you the answers. And in order to do that, you need to be challenging your tools with questions such as what are the user's needs, what motivates them to make a decision, what are users thinking when they see a product, what are they doing before converting, what pages are leaking money, and so on and so on. And yeah, I spoke about needing good tools. So what sort of tools do we need in order to excel at CRO? So I believe you need 3 main tools. Quantitative tools that tell us the why, tell us the what. Qualitative tools that tell us the why. And then once we've collected the data and got, created great fixes and we want to test things, the testing tools that tell us the how and when. And here we've got a few examples of quantitative tools. We could argue that Google Analytics is probably the most widespread and most used tool by many organizations, but there are a huge range of tools such as Omnichart or Domain Analytics, Rupra, Kissmetrics that allow you to collect this source of data. I think it's important that you use a tool that suits your needs and is able to answer your business questions. Moving on to qualitative tools, I've split this down further to three types of tools. So firstly, we have the insight tools. These allow you to ask really detailed questions, and I think this is where we can really drill into the factors that can affect conversion rate. Things like trust, likability, branding, past experience, social proof, association, word of mouth, price copy, and so on and so on. Then we have the user behavior tools. These allow us to see how people are interacting with your website, what are users doing, parts of the website they're interacting, parts that they're not, and is there anything that's not working. And lastly, we've got user testing tools. So these allow us to get on-demand videos of people using your website or app and speaking their thoughts as you set them tasks. And you get feedback on the whole process. This really allows you to identify bugs and conversion rate killers on your key customer journeys at speed. Yeah, and lastly, the testing tools. So I think we touched on this earlier. Once you know the areas you want to fix and you've created some great hypotheses, you obviously need a tool to deploy these tests. And here we've got a few examples of some great tools, such as VWO, Google Optimize, Optimizely, Unbounce, and Adobe Target. Again, every tool has their advantages and disadvantages, but it's about choosing the tool that suits your business needs the most. So we've looked at the tools, and we're now going to move on to the research framework. And yeah, this is where I think the hard work takes place, and it kind of underpins everything we do, CRO related. Think of this framework of a list of things you must do in order to give you, all the insights you ever need to make any change on your website. And this 6-point research framework looks like this. So it involves a technical analysis of the site, a data analysis of the site, a heuristic analysis, also looks at mouse tracking, surveys, and using testing. And after you go through this whole process, you'll be left with a list of issues which you can go ahead and attack and fix. So I think it's really important that the first step is to squash any bugs or issues with your site. These are likely to be your main conversion rate killers, and this can often result in very quick wins, and simple fixes can result in huge increases. Just take Expedia, for example. So when we're looking for these bugs, we need to ask ourselves 3 main questions. What is broken? Are pages slow? And do you have any issues with any devices? And Google Analytics is good at answering these key questions, or any other tools for that matter. But we're going to focus on Google Analytics today. And in the following examples, just make you aware that we're using Google Analytics demo data. So the first report that you should look at in your tool, or Google Analytics, is a browser analysis. So in this case, we can see all the browsers that people use on the website and how much traffic is contributed by each browser. And in this instance, you can see that Chrome is, contributes the most at 69% or 68%. We can see this converts at just over or just under 4.5%. But then when we look at the browser below it, we can see we've got Safari, and that brings in close to 16% of traffic. But look at the conversion rate, only converts at 0.59%. And we can see this when we go further, further and further down the browsers. We've got other browsers such as Internet Explorer and Safari in-app. And, this really focuses your attention, allows you to kind of address the areas that need to be fixed. So now we know Safari is not converting. Is there a bug? What are the issues? So there's a really good example of this recently for a client of one of ours, and we noticed that the conversion rate on Firefox dropped. When we looked into this further, we found that in the buying process, one of the key call to actions was missing from the site. So users had their basket, they've got a range of items that they want to purchase, but the main button to go to the next part of the process was missing. Users were clicking around the website trying to figure out how to pay for these items. A button was missing. We spotted this, and it's fixed. And we fixed this. And if you fix these bugs, you're going to make more money and you're going to get more leads. Another tool we have, another report that we like to look at is the site speed tool. So if your website's slow, it could have a negative impact on your results. If your site loads in 3 seconds, that's amazing. 7 seconds, it's great. But anything up to, upwards of 10 seconds, you need to do something about it. So you can go into Google Analytics or, the tool of your choice, and you can pull up this report. And what this report looks at is every single page of your website. It pulls out how many people visit a page. And what we have here is we're actually comparing the time it takes to load each page compared to the website average. So we can quickly see at speed underperforming pages. So in this instance, we can actually see that the home page is one of the slowest pages, and it's the page with the highest amount of traffic. Again, fix these issues, and conversion rate is likely to increase. Another great report is the device report. So here we kind of apply the same principles. We look at what devices users are using to visit our website. We look at how much traffic is coming through the site through each device, and we look at how each device performs. So in this example, we can see that desktop is the highest converting device with conversion rate of 4.54%. But just below that, we can see that mobile traffic brings in over 25% of traffic, which is a significant amount. But we can see it converts at 0.45%. So we can see there's an issue here with the mobile experience, and users aren't able to, complete your desired actions on the site. So again, it's focus your attention. It shows you, again, where you need to focus, what are the challenges that users are facing in the mobile, and it kind of gives you an area to investigate. Fixing issues with devices or browsers, again, will yield high performance. The next point, or the next step of the research phase, is the data analysis. So you complete your technical analysis, you spotted all the bugs that you need to fix. The next part is looking at data. But before that, we need to kind of know the problems. We want to know the answers. We want to have questions to ask your data in order to get good fixes. And if you know what you want to ask, you can be really specific with your analytics tool. I think it's important to know that the more you do this, the better you become at it. So I've got a few questions, or a few example of questions that we need to ask our tools. Things such as, where's our site losing money? What are users doing? What actions correlate with a higher conversion rate? Are there top, what pages are underperforming? And so on and so on. And your tool needs to be able to answer these questions. In all honesty, we can spend the whole webinar on this section, which I think highlights how many questions you need to ask your tools and all the different reports. And remember, if your tool can't answer these detailed questions, you might need to evaluate if the tool's actually right for you. But I think I'm going to show you a few examples on how we can start to address the first question, such as, where's my site losing money? So one report that's great for this is the funnel visualization report in Google. Every website should have a funnel which users have to go through in order to complete an action. And you can set this up in Google by adding the steps required to complete a desired action in GA, and when you do this, you're left with this great report. And we can see in this case that the area that we're leaking the most money is right at the top of the funnel. It's between step 1 and 2, and that is users going between the cart and the billing and shipping. So again, this focuses our attention on where to really spend the time. So now we've seen this, we can look at the cart page and try to assess what are the barriers here. What are the factors that are not allowing users to convert. You can also see there's a drop-off at each other stage, but it's not as dramatic as the first stage. So again, like I said earlier, we know where to focus our time on. Another great report is the landing page report. So the landing page report is kind of self-explanatory, and here we look at what pages users land on and the result this has in conversion rate. So in this instance, we can see that the home page converts at 2.21%, whereas if you look at the page below it, the YouTube page converts at 0.33%. So again, we spotted another issue. This page isn't performing, it's not pulling its weight. So again, this focuses our attention. We can look at this page and start to see what's wrong with it. And one other method we can do to look at the performance of this page and see what's wrong and how it can improve is a heuristic analysis. And a heuristic analysis is probably close to opinion that you're going to get in this process. Think of it as an expert's opinion, but I think it's important to know this process is not optimal, but I think it's very powerful. It can allow you to do things at speed. And it's usually one of the first things we do. I think it's important to remember that it's an expert's opinion, and this really matters. You know, the amount of time an expert has seen, you know, the amount of pages an expert's seen, the amount of time they spend looking at pages, and the amount of tests they've run really does make a difference. And in essence, in a structured manner, we look at page by page, and we look at our user experience and measure the page against what we've seen in the past, what works and what doesn't, and we, you know, apply best practice. I think it's important to remember whatever we identify or discover through this heuristic analysis is not the truth. It's an educated opinion, but again, it gives us a really clear area where to focus on. And there are many models that you can use to do an heuristic analysis. I think one of the more popular ones out there is the list model. And in essence, the list model is where we look at 4 key elements. So how relevant the page is, how clear it is, you know, look at distractions and anxiety. So let's go into this in a few more details. So when we look at relevance, we look at things such as, does the page meet the user's expectation, both in terms of content and design? Has it matched what they think they want to see? So if they clicked an ad and they've landed to a relevant page, is the content clear? Is the content on offer as clear as it can be? Can we make it clearer? Can we make it more simple? And then we try to address things such as the anxiety and friction on the page. So what on the page is causing doubt, hesitation, and uncertainties? Is there anything, you know, on the page that's making it difficult to complete the desired action? Again, can we simplify anything? Yeah, and the aim there is to look at all the friction areas and try to minimize it. And lastly, what on the page is not helping users take action? Is there something that's taking the user's attention away from something? Remember, if it's not on there to motivate the user, it's just friction, and therefore it's a good idea to remove it. And this model basically states that if you improve the clarity, improve the relevance, remove the distractions, and remove the anxiety areas on your website, your value proposition or motivation should increase, therefore performance should increase. Another great model is focused behavior model. And that states that desired action when your website happens when 3 things occur. And that's when users are highly motivated, it's easy to take action on the website, and there's a trigger or a form that allows them to do it. So let's say that it's easy, there's a form on the page and there's a trigger, but they're not motivated. Likelihood is they're not going to take action. And that's the same with, you know, all 3 of them combinations. And I actually think there's, you know, a great example of this last week when I actually renewed my car insurance. So I think as many people aware, when you're looking for car insurance, there's a huge array of fields you must enter before you get your quote. And I actually counted them. There was 50 fields. Would I usually be prepared to fill out 50 fields on the website? For example, if I was just looking to buy a t-shirt, would I fill out 50 fields? Probably not, because it's hard to do. So why did I fill out 50 fields in this instance? And that's because motivation is high. I don't want to be pulled over by the police. So, you know, I'm highly motivated to actually fill out those forms. Another reason why I was happy to fill out those forms is because some sites make it really easy to do. Once I actually remember my details from last year, so all I have to do is go through the fields just to check if everything's correct, update any things that might change from last year, such as no claims discounts and so on, and it made it really easy to do. But if we were to compare that to another website when I was looking to, you know, look for my car insurance, imagine if I had to manually type in 50 fields. You could argue the page where all the fields were pre-populated would have a higher conversion rate than the page where I had to type in every single field. So we've gone over the technical analysis, the data analysis, the heuristic analysis. The next stage is mouse tracking. And mouse tracking typically takes shape of heat maps, scroll maps, and recordings. So now we know what's happening through data, the heat, we know what's happening. the mouse tracking software should help tell us the why. So we've got heat maps, and they give you a great visual representation of aggregated data. Where are people clicking? And usually, I think many people have seen these. Red shows an area of interest or a lot of clicks, whereas blue an area with little interest. So heat maps are great because it can answer questions such as whether your navigation is working, or if people can locate the search on your page easily, or what are people clicking? Are they clicking things that they think are links but are not links? And is there anything distracting you from the user from your content? And I recently spotted this on one of our clients' websites where users were scrolling right down to the bottom of the page to click a desired button, and we're seeing this time after time again. So the thought process was, this is what users are looking for, let's raise this higher up the page. So remember those two circles we spoke about earlier? Maybe we have customer intent on the left and website purpose on the right. Once we identify things such as this, what we're doing, and create great fixes, what we're doing is trying to make that overlap greater. Remember, if customer intent and the website purpose is greater, performance is likely to increase. So here we've got an example of recordings on the left. Recordings are great for observing how people interact with your website and spotting issues that they may have. And these are real users, so it's really valuable data. In addition to that, on the right we have scroll maps, and they show you how far people scroll. And this can have a big impact on how you prioritize content. Usually we have two types of content. Content that's nice to have on the page, and content that we must have on the page. And for performing such analysis, we can really tell us how to prioritize content, where to put it, where not to put it. Is there anything called, is there any harsh lines on the website where users are getting stuck, for example? If there are, we might have to, tweak the design on the website. So once it's complete, and we've completed, mouse track analysis, heuristic analysis, data, and technical, we should have a pretty good indication of what makes users convert, what doesn't make them convert, and what the issues. But if that's not the case, one great tool or component of CRO is surveys. And surveys are great because you can really drill into the huge number of factors that affect conversion rate. Things such as branding, price, likability, trust. If you think you have an issue with price, we can actually ask the user, what they think, for example. And typically we want to learn about friction points the user has with the site, what needs something from converting, what motivates them to convert, and what's in the buying process. I've actually got a few examples of how you can use polls depending on your situation. So here we've got things such as bounce rate issue. So you've looked in the data and you've got high bounce rate. So we want to understand why. So we run a poll on the page with high bounce rate, and we can ask the user simple questions such as, does this page contain information you're looking for? So can you imagine the great data you're collecting here? Or if you wanted to look at is pricing an issue? You can literally ask users, is our pricing clear, for example, or is pricing a factor when looking to purchase a product with us? And here we can see a wide range of questions depending on your needs. And here we've actually got an example of a question that we ran on one of our clients' sites. So here we asked them, what is the one thing that nearly stopped you from buying from us today? And here are some of the replies. Having to use a different browser to add an item to basket, so it's clearly an issue with the website. Shipping costs, cheaper elsewhere, it's hard to return the clothes. So we're getting some really, really good data from the user, and as a result, we can create some really, really great fixes. For example, we can address the issue on the browser. I think in this instance it was Firefox. We can look at our pricing structure and so on and so on. And moving away from polls, we also have surveys. These usually are a bit more in depth, sometimes often incentivized. And we've got an example here from office shoes. And we can see here that we're getting some really, really good data. For example, how likely are you to shop with Office again? Is Office the first choice when looking to buy shoes, or is it a fashion brand? So we can really see how our brand sits within the industry. And you can imagine they're getting some really, really great actionable data here, which will fuel key business decisions moving forwards. So the last step of the process is user testing. And the premise of user testing is really quite simple. You observe what people are doing and how they use your website while commenting through the process. So it's a bit similar to recording, just with a bit more commentary. And the key here is to ask users, give them challenges. So usually we set a really specific task. Can you find a Father's Day card on the Moving with Pig website, and they will speak their thoughts out loud. We can give them a more broad task, or a final completion task. And I think the key here is to pay attention to what the user's saying, experience, and again, you're going to get some really, really great insight. So that completes the the 6 main components that I think are vital to any CRO program. So now you've completed your research. What you should be left with is a big list of issues and big list of issues and areas to address. If there's anything big that points out, such as the button's not working on a checkout, you should just go ahead and fix these as soon as possible. For the harder changes, we need to create hypotheses. So if we're not sure if the changes that we're going to make are going to have desired effects or not, we need to hypothesize this. After that, we test, and then we learn from those tests. So I think that's a great process. So we're getting near to the end of the webinar. I just want to summarize, I think, the key points from this. And I think it's important to ignore the tactics and quick wins that you see in blogs and blogs online, and you make sure that you go through that 6-stage research process. You've got to do that because it works. It works on any website in the world, any brand, B2B, B2C. And it works because it really identifies what the actual problems are on your website. It allows you to prioritize the issues that are most important. Research is key, and it's where you should always start. Think of this as the foundation of your CRO program. It's vital. Without research, you're just making changes and putting your finger in the air or listening to a hippo. You also need to make sure that your tools are robust enough to answer the 3 main questions that I think underpin any CRO activity, and that is, what makes users convert, what doesn't make them convert, and are there any issues, and if so, how can they be fixed? Constantly aim to answer these questions by asking further questions, and your conversion rate should improve. From your research, you should identify problems, create hypotheses and tests, but it's not easy and it requires skills and it's not a quick process. You need to have the tools that get the best insights as you live and die by your insights. And your tools need to be robust enough to collect quantitative and quantitative data. The better your insight, the better your fixes will be. Remember, you need to be analytical, data-driven. You need to focus on the process and not tactics. Be curious and always learning in order to get the very best at your CRO program. If you don't understand the data or not asking the right questions, this will have an impact on the quality of your program. And so this is very important. If you get this process right, you'll be equipped with more areas to test, and not only that, the tests you run are more likely to be winning variants than losing variants. And the more winning variants you have, the more, the higher and quicker the performance gains will come in, and more, more impactful your CRO efforts would be. So that concludes the webinar. I hope it proved useful. Now I'm going to move on to some of the questions that you may have asked. We'll try and get them answered within the time permitted. Any questions that I've been unable to answer in the time, I will try and personally email you back. I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions. So we've got a good question here. How long should you usually run a split test for? This really does vary between websites. So, a website with high traffic allows you to kind of make sure that the results you're seeing are actually what you're seeing. But I always like to say a minimum of 2 weeks at least. But take it for example, if you have a website with 2 million sessions a month compared to a website with 100 sessions per month, the tests are going to be completed, with the page with high amount of sessions. And I think it's important to know there's 2 key factors that affect this, and this is the amount of sessions and the performance, conversion rate increase. So if the gains that you're making between tests are really small, it's going to take a long time to quantify those results. If the conversion rate change is bigger, you're going to need less sessions. So yeah, this can really range, but I'd always recommend running it for at least 2 weeks. Let's look at some more questions. So how long between starting CRO activity and running tests do you start to see the impacts, and how long is the process? Well, again, this depends on how good your hypothesis is and the results from your test, but usually the impact is, can be quick. So, we've run tests where after a week we've started to see that, our new variant is outperforming the original, and the test concludes quickly. And once we're happy with that it's statistically significant, and I think that's a point where you must reach all your tests, and all your the testing tools should be able to tell you when you've reached this point. You should be able to see the results quite quickly. Are tests costly and time intensive to implement? Are tests costly and time intensive to implement? I think this can depend on how much control you have with the website, and can you do it in-house, or does it require developers? What we find is websites that we have access to, with clients, we can usually get tests up and running quickly, and something that can work into the our retainer. But sometimes we come across clients that we don't have control over their website, so any changes that we have to make do require an external developer, and yeah, the costs can be potentially more expensive than if you have the resources in-house. But in addition to that, some of the tools out there are great, and some of the changes you can make within the tools. So it really does depend on the scope of the changes you want to make. If you want looking to make a wholesale homepage change, it's probably going to be more expensive than just changing a call to action, which you can do within a tool. I think I want to leave that there. But any questions that I haven't been able to answer, I will email you back with a reply shortly. Thank you, and I hope that proved to be very useful.